We're about to unveil 24 of the rarest supercars from 1940 that most people have never even heard of. 1. Bugatti Type 57 SC Atlantic. Imagine stumbling upon a car so rare, it's like finding a unicorn in your backyard. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about with the Bugatti Type 57 SC Atlantic. Only 2 of these beauties are known to exist today, making them the holy grail of automotive design. But what makes the Atlantic so special? It's not just its rarity, it's the way it looks like it drove straight out of a sci-fi movie from the 1940s. Picture this, a sleek teardrop shape with a riveted spine running down the middle like some kind of mechanical dinosaur. It's not just eye-catching, it's jaw-dropping. 2. Alfa Romeo 8C 2900B. In the late 1930s, one car was turning heads and burning rubber like no other. The Alfa Romeo 8C 2900B wasn't just a pretty face, it was a beast on both the road and the racetrack. But here's the kicker. Just when this Italian beauty was hitting its stride, world events put the brakes on its reign. Talk about bad timing. Now, let's take a closer look at this rare gem. Picture a car with lines so stunning, it could make a Ferrari blush. The 8C 2900B was the epitome of Italian elegance, with its long hood and short rear that just screamed Bella Macchina. But it wasn't all show and no go. Under that sleek hood lurked a 2.9-liter straight-8 engine that pumped out a whopping 180 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but back then, it was enough to push this beauty to speeds of 120
miles per hour.
3. Delahaye 165. Picture a car so beautiful it could stop traffic on the busiest New York street. That's exactly what happened when the Delahaye 165 made its grand debut at the 1939 World's Fair. People couldn't take their eyes off this French masterpiece with its flowing curves and gleaming chrome accents that looked more like a work of art than a vehicle. But here's the thing. Just as this automotive gem was ready to shine, dark clouds were gathering over Europe. The looming threat of war cast a shadow over the Delahaye's moment in the spotlight. Talk about bad timing. 4. Mercedes-Benz 540K Special Roadster. Remember the silver arrows that dominated racing in the 1930s? Well, Mercedes-Benz wasn't just about track monsters. They had a secret weapon for the road that was just as impressive. Enter the Mercedes-Benz 540K Special Roadster, a car so rare that only about 25 were ever made. Can you imagine stumbling upon one of these beauties today? Picture this, a long, sleek hood stretching out in front of you, leading to an elegant body that just screams luxury. But don't let its good looks fool you. Under that hood lurked a supercharged 5.4-liter straight-8 engine. This beast could pump out 180 horsepower, which was like strapping a rocket to your back in those days. No wonder it could hit speeds of up to 100
miles per hour.
5. Talbot Lago T150 CSS Teardrop Coupe. In the late 1930s, one car rolled onto the scene that looked like it had driven straight out of a sci-fi movie. The Talbot Lago T150 CSS Teardrop Coupe wasn't just a car. It was a glimpse into the future of automotive design. Can you imagine seeing this sleek, curvaceous beauty gliding down the streets of pre-war Europe? It must have been like spotting a UFO. But the teardrop wasn't just about turning heads. Its streamlined body was a perfect blend of art and science, cutting through the air like a hot knife through butter. Under that smooth exterior, a 4.0-liter straight-6 engine purred, ready to unleash 140 horsepower at a moment's notice. This wasn't just a pretty face, it was a serious performer. 6. Rolls-Royce Phantom III. Rolls-Royce had long been the go-to brand for luxury cars, but in 1936 they took things to a whole new level. Enter the Phantom III, a car so fancy it made other luxury vehicles look like grocery getters. Can you imagine rolling up to a red carpet event in one of these beauties? The Phantom III wasn't just about looks, though. Under that long, imposing hood lurked a secret weapon, a V12 engine that could pump out a whopping 180 horsepower. That's right, Rolls-Royce wasn't messing around. This car could cruise along at highway speeds without breaking a sweat, all while keeping its passengers in the lap of luxury. But the real magic of the Phantom 3 was in the details. Ever been in a car with independent front suspension back in the 1930s? Probably not, because it was super rare. This fancy feature made the ride smoother than a freshly ironed shirt. And let's talk about those hydraulic brakes. They were a game changer, giving drivers the kind of stopping power they'd only dreamed of before. 7. Bentley Mark V. Remember Bentley? The company that used to make some of the most incredible cars on the road? Well, by the 1930s, they had hit rock bottom. But don't count them out just yet. Under Rolls-Royce ownership, Bentley was about to make a comeback that would shock the automotive world. Enter the Bentley Mark V, a car that screamed, "We're back, baby," with its sleek lines and powerful straight-six engine. This wasn't just any old car. It was Bentley's way of saying they still had what it takes to compete in the luxury market. And boy, did they deliver! 8. Lagonda V12. Ever heard of a car with an engine so impressive it sounded like a symphony orchestra? Well, buckle up, because we're about to introduce you to the Lagonda V12. This British beauty rolled onto the scene in the late 1930s, boasting a 5.4-liter V12 engine that was music to any car lover's ears. But here's the kicker. Just as Lagonda was ready to wow the world with this mechanical marvel, dark clouds were gathering over Europe. Talk about bad timing. The looming threat of war cast a shadow over this automotive masterpiece. Despite the gloomy backdrop, the Lagonda V12 was a sight to behold. Its sleek body housed some seriously advanced tech for its time. We're talking independent front suspension that made bumpy roads feel smooth as silk, and a synchromesh gearbox that let you shift gears without grinding your teeth. It was like driving a piece of the future. 9. Ferrari 125S. In 1947, a new name roared onto the automotive scene, one that would soon become synonymous with speed, luxury, and racing glory. Enzo Ferrari, a man with a vision and a passion for cars, unleashed his first creation onto the world. The Ferrari 125S wasn't just any car. It was the birth of a legend. Picture this: a sleek, compact racer with curves in all the right places. But the real magic was under the hood. The 125S packed a punch with its 1.5-liter V12 engine, a powerhouse that could push this beauty to speeds of around 130
miles per hour.
That might not sound like much today, but back then, it was like strapping a rocket to your back. But Ferrari wasn't just about raw power. The 125S featured a tubular chassis that was light as a feather, but strong as an ox. This innovative design gave the car incredible handling, making it a force to be reckoned with on the racetrack. 10. Jaguar XK120. Ever wondered what happens when a car company decides to shake things up? Well, back in 1948, Jaguar did just that with the XK120. This sleek beauty wasn't just another pretty face, it was a game changer that had other car makers scrambling to catch up. Picture this: a car so fast it could hit 120
miles per hour,
making it the speediest production car in the world at the time. The XK120 wasn't just about raw speed, though. It had curves in all the right places, with a design that made people stop and stare. And under that long, elegant hood, a brand new 3.4-liter inline-six engine that pumped out an impressive 160 horsepower. 11. Delahaye 175S Saoutchik Roadster. Ever heard of a car that could make a Parisian sculpture blush? Well, in post-war France, the Delahaye 175S Saoutchik Roadster did just that. This wasn't just a car. It was a rolling masterpiece that turned heads and dropped jaws wherever it went. Picture this: curves so smooth they'd make a river jealous, chrome details that sparkled like diamonds, and a presence that screamed luxury. The mastermind behind this beauty, none other than Jacques Saoutchik, a French coach builder with an eye for the extraordinary. He didn't just design cars, he crafted dreams on wheels. But all this beauty came at a price. The 175S was so exclusive, only about 14 were ever made. Talk about rare. And if you wanted one, you'd better have deep pockets. These beauties can fetch millions at auction today. 12. Italia 202 SC Coupe. Ever heard of a car that was so groundbreaking it ended up in a museum? Well, buckle up, because we're about to introduce you to the Italia 202 SC Coupe. Back in 1947, this little Italian company created a car that looked like it drove straight out of the future. Picture this: clean, unbroken lines that flowed from front to back, with not a single unnecessary bit of chrome or decoration. It was like someone had taken a smooth pebble and turned it into a car. But the 202 SC wasn't just about looks. It was one of the first cars to use unibody construction, making it lighter and stronger than other cars of its time. Under the hood, a peppy 1.5-liter engine gave this beauty enough oomph to hit 100
miles per hour.
Not too shabby for a post-war ride, but the real magic was in how it handled. With its advanced suspension, the 202 SC hugged the road like it was on rails. 13. Bentley Mark VI. Ever wondered what happens when a racing legend decides to switch gears? Well, back in 1946, Bentley did just that with the Mark VI. This wasn't your grandfather's Bentley. It was a whole new beast that set the standard for post-war luxury. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, wasn't Bentley all about speed and racing? You're not wrong. But times were changing, and Bentley needed to change with them. The Mark VI was their answer to a world craving comfort and elegance. Picture this: smooth, elegant lines that screamed sophistication, not speed. Under the hood, a silky smooth inline-six engine that purred like a contented cat. But the real game changer was the standard steel body. This was a big deal back then. It meant Bentley could make cars faster and more efficiently than ever before. 14. Talbot Lago T26 Grand Sport. Ever heard of a car that could win races on Sunday and chauffeur you to a fancy dinner on Monday? Well, that's exactly what the Talbot Lago T26 Grand Sport was all about. Back in post-war France, this beauty was turning heads and burning rubber like nobody's business. Picture this: a sleek, streamlined body that looked like it was carved by the wind itself. But the T26 Grand Sport wasn't just a pretty face. Under that long hood lurked a 4.5-liter inline-six engine that could pump out a whopping 180 horsepower. That was some serious muscle back in those days. Now, you might be thinking, sounds great, but how did it perform on the track? Well, let me tell you, this car was no slouch. It raced its way to victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, proving it had the speed and stamina to hang with the best of them. 15. Aston Martin 2-liter Sports. Ever wondered how a small British car company became synonymous with style and espionage? Well, buckle up, because we're about to take a ride back to 1948 when Aston Martin launched a car that would change everything. The Aston Martin 2-liter Sports might not sound like much, but this little beauty was the spark that ignited a legacy. Picture this: post-war Britain still recovering from the chaos, and here comes a car that looks like it drove straight out of a dream. With its sleek lines and purring engine, the 2-liter Sports turned heads wherever it went. But it wasn't just about looks. Under that elegant hood sat a 2.0-liter four-cylinder engine pumping out 90 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but back then, it was enough to hit speeds of 90
miles per hour.
The real magic of the 2-liter Sports was in its bones. Aston Martin built this beauty on a lightweight chassis with independent front suspension. That might sound like a bunch of car jargon, but trust us, it made this car handle like a dream. It was like dancing on wheels. 16. Healey Westland Roadster. Ever wondered what it was like to drive a car that could heal a nation's wounded spirit? That's exactly what the Healey Westland Roadster did for post-war Britain. As the country was picking up the pieces, Donald Healey, a guy who knew his way around both engines and racetracks, decided it was time to inject some excitement back into British roads. Now, picture this: a sleek, lightweight roadster that looked like it could slice through the air. The Healey Westland wasn't just a pretty face, though. It packed a punch with its 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine, making it a real contender in the high-performance sports car scene. This beauty could really move. But what really set the Healey Westland apart was its advanced chassis design. It handled like a dream, hugging corners and making drivers feel like they were one with the road. No wonder it turned so many heads back in the day. 17. Packard Darren Convertible Victoria. Ever heard of a car that could make Hollywood stars swoon? Well, back in the late 1930s, the Packard Darren Convertible Victoria did just that. This wasn't your average luxury ride. It was a rolling work of art designed by Howard Dutch Darren, a man with a vision that set him apart from the crowd. Picture this: flowing lines that seemed to melt into the horizon, crowned by a unique feature called the Darren Dip. This sweeping curve in the bodywork wasn't just for looks. It actually helped the car slice through the air like a hot knife through butter. Talk about form-meeting function. But the Darren wasn't just about good looks. Under that long, elegant hood sat a powerful straight-eight engine that could really move. And inside, pure luxury. We're talking top-notch leather seats and custom woodwork that would make a royal palace jealous. 18. Fiat 1100 SMM Berlinetta. Ever heard of a car that could take on giants despite its small size? Well, back in post-war Italy, the Fiat 1100 SMM Berlinetta was doing just that. This little powerhouse might have had humble origins, but it sure knew how to make a big splash on the racetrack. Picture this: a sleek, streamlined body that looked like it could slice through the air. The Fiat 1100 SMM Berlinetta wasn't just a pretty face, though. Under its hood sat a peppy 1.1-liter inline-4 engine that could pump out about 70 horsepower. Now, that might not sound like much today, but back then, it was enough to give this little car some serious zip. But here's where things get really interesting. This pint-sized racer didn't just compete in big-name events like the Mille Miglia and Targa Florio. It actually won them. Can you imagine the looks on people's faces when this tiny Fiat zoomed past much larger and more powerful cars? 19. Bristol 400. Ever wondered what happens when you mix aviation expertise with car manufacturing? Well, that's exactly what Bristol did back in 1946. From the ashes of World War II, this British company rose like a phoenix, ready to take on the automotive world. The Bristol 400 wasn't just any old car. It was a blend of pre-war BMW design and cutting-edge aircraft technology. Picture this: a sleek, aerodynamic body that looked like it could slice through the air. But it wasn't just about looks. The 400 packed a punch with its BMW-derived 2.0-liter six-cylinder engine capable of pushing out 85 horsepower. That was enough to get this beauty up to 90
miles per hour.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Bristol didn't just stop at the engine. They used their aircraft know-how to create a lightweight chassis that made the 400 handle like a dream. It was like driving a plane on wheels. 20. Alfa Romeo 6C 2500 Supersport. Remember Alfa Romeo's legendary 6C series from before the war? Well, they weren't about to let that legacy fade away. Enter the 6C 2500 Supersport, Alfa's last hurrah for this iconic line. But could this old-school beauty keep up in the fast-changing post-war world? One look at the 6C 2500 Supersport and you'd be smitten. With its elegant lines and streamlined body, it was like a moving sculpture. But this car wasn't just about good looks. Under that sleek hood sat a powerful 2.5-liter inline-six engine that could really move. It was like Alfa Romeo took everything great about the pre-war models and cranked it up a notch. And boy, did it perform! The 6C 2500 Supersport didn't just cruise down boulevards, it tore up racetracks too. This beauty even snagged a victory in the prestigious Mille Miglia race. Talk about proving it still had what it takes. 21. Delage D670. Remember Delage? They used to be the cream of the crop in French luxury cars before World War II. But after the war, everyone was wondering if they still had what it took to compete. Well, in 1946, Delagia came roaring back with the D670, ready to show the world they weren't done yet. This wasn't just any old car. The D670 had a sleek body that was a far cry from the fancy, over-the-top designs of the past. It was like Delage decided to trade in their fancy suit for a sharp modern tuxedo. And under the hood, a powerful 4.0-liter six-cylinder engine that could really move. We're talking about 140 horsepower, enough to make this beauty fly down the road. 22. Fraser Nash Le Mans Replica. Ever heard of a car that could go from the racetrack to the street without breaking a sweat? Well, that's exactly what the Fraser Nash Le Mans Replica did in post-war Britain. This wasn't just any old sports car. It was a slice of racing heaven you could drive to the grocery store. Now, you might be wondering about that unusual name. Le Mans Replica? Sounds like something you'd find in a toy store, right? Wrong. This beauty earned its stripes on the actual Le Mans circuit, proving it had the guts to back up its flashy title. Under the hood, the Le Mans Replica packed a serious punch. It borrowed its engine from BMW, specifically the 328's 2.0-liter straight-six. This wasn't just any old motor, it was the kind of powerhouse that could make other cars eat dust. 23. Lancia Aprilia Gran Turismo. Ever heard of a car company that wasn't afraid to think outside the box? That was Lancia in a nutshell. These guys were always pushing the envelope, but their post-war Gran Turismo, the Aprilia Gran Turismo, took things to a whole new level. When this beauty hit the streets, it turned heads like you wouldn't believe. The Aprilia Gran Turismo had this sleek, aerodynamic body that looked like it could slice through the air. But the real magic was under the hood. Lancia packed this car with a unique narrow-angle V4 engine. Now, that might not sound like much, but trust us, it was a big deal back then. This little powerhouse could pump out about 70 horsepower, enough to push the car to speeds of around 90
miles per hour.
But Lancia didn't stop there. They gave the Aprilia Gran Turismo an independent suspension system that made it handle like a dream. It was like driving on a cloud, even on those bumpy post-war roads. This car wasn't just a pretty face, it was a showcase of Lancia's engineering skills. 24. Bugatti Type 73C. Bugatti was once the king of automotive excellence, but after World War II, they faced a tough challenge. Could they keep up with the changing times? Enter the Bugatti Type 73C, a car that was a far cry from their pre-war luxury machines. This little wonder was compact and nimble, perfect for the new era of motoring. Under the hood, the Type 73C packed a punch with its advanced four-cylinder engine. It might have been smaller than Bugatti's famous pre-war monsters, but it was no slouch. The real magic, though, was in how it drove. The Type 73C featured four-wheel independent suspension, a feature that was pretty rare back then. It made the car handle like a dream, hugging corners and smoothing out bumpy roads.